You're not stuck because you lack discipline, you're stuck because you're blind. Most people believe their problem is laziness or inconsistency, but that's not the truth. What feels like weakness is often a hidden pattern running silently in the background, shaping every decision you make. In this video, you'll uncover the one psychological blind spot that quietly controls your life, along with the subtle thinking patterns behind it that most people never notice, let alone learn to change. The blind spot isn't obvious. That's why it's powerful. It hides inside your normal thoughts, your habits, and even the way you explain your own behavior to yourself every day. It shows up when you say things like, "This is just how I am," or "I've always been like this." It feels like truth, but it's often just a story you stopped questioning. Most people move through life reacting instead of observing. They assume their thoughts are accurate reflections of reality, instead of recognizing them as interpretations shaped by past experiences. Self-aware individuals do something different. They pause. They notice their own thinking. They treat their thoughts as data, not commands. That small shift changes everything. Because once you stop blindly believing every thought, you create space. And in that space, you gain control. Not over everything, but over how you respond. Here's where the blind spot deepens. Most people don't realize they're not just reacting to reality, they're reacting to patterns formed years ago, often during moments they barely remember. For example, someone who was criticized often growing up might now avoid challenges, not because they lack ability, but because their mind associates effort with emotional risk. So they procrastinate. They delay. They tell themselves they need more time, more preparation, more certainty. But underneath all of that is a simple pattern: avoidance of discomfort. Smarter individuals don't eliminate discomfort. They understand it. They see it as a signal, not a stop sign. They lean into it carefully instead of running away automatically. That's the difference. One group reacts unconsciously. The other responds deliberately. Same emotions, same fears, completely different outcomes. Another layer of this blind spot is identity. Most people define themselves by their past behavior. I'm not confident. I'm bad at discipline. I always mess things up. But identity is not fixed. It's reinforced. Every time you repeat a behavior, you strengthen a belief about who you are. And every belief then influences your next action. It becomes a loop. You act based on who you think you are, and then you use that action to prove yourself right. Without realizing it, you trap yourself in a self-fulfilling cycle. Self-aware people break this loop by questioning the identity itself. Instead of saying, "This is who I am," they ask, "Is this just what I've practiced?" That question alone creates distance. And in that distance, change becomes possible. Not instantly, but gradually, in a way that actually lasts. Now here's something most people won't tell you. This blind spot doesn't just keep you stuck, it also protects you. In a strange way, it feels safe. Because staying the same is predictable. Even if your current life isn't great, it's familiar. And the brain often prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar growth. So you hesitate, you delay, you overthink. Not because you're incapable, but because part of you is trying to keep things stable. This is why change feels harder than it logically should. You're not just fighting external obstacles. You're negotiating with an internal system designed to resist disruption. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you questioned one of your own thoughts instead of automatically believing it? Not analyzing it, not justifying it, but actually stepping back and asking, is this objectively true, or is this just my default interpretation? That moment of questioning is where awareness begins, and awareness is the only way to expose a blind spot. Another pattern hidden inside this is control. Most people try to control outcomes instead of controlling their responses. They focus on results, success, validation, certainty. And when those don't happen immediately, they feel frustrated, stuck, or defeated. But outcomes are influenced by too many variables. You can't control all of them. What you can control is how consistently you act despite uncertainty. Self-aware individuals shift their focus. They stop chasing guaranteed outcomes and start building reliable behaviors. They measure effort, not just results. This reduces pressure. It also builds momentum, because when your focus is within your control, progress becomes more consistent and less emotionally exhausting. Now, here's the darker side of this awareness. Once you start seeing your blind spot, you can't unsee it, and that can be uncomfortable. You'll notice patterns in yourself that you used to ignore. You'll catch yourself making the same excuses, repeating the same habits, thinking the same limiting thoughts. And for a moment, it might feel overwhelming, like you've been responsible for your own stagnation this entire time. But awareness is not meant to make you feel guilty. It's meant to give you leverage, because what you can see, you can change. What you ignore controls you. What you observe, you can influence. That's the trade-off. There's also a risk here. Some people become too aware. They analyze everything. They question every thought, every action, every emotion. And instead of gaining clarity, they become stuck in overthinking. Awareness turns into hesitation. Reflection turns into paralysis. That's why balance matters. The goal isn't to think more, it's to think better. To notice patterns without getting trapped in them. Use awareness as a tool, not a cage. Notice, adjust, move forward. That's the rhythm. Another important shift is how you interpret failure. Most people see failure as proof that something is wrong with them. Self-aware individuals see it as feedback, not emotional judgment, but information. A signal that something needs adjustment, not abandonment. Imagine someone trying to build a habit. They fail for a few days and immediately think, "I'm not disciplined," so they stop trying. But someone else looks at the same situation and thinks, "What made this difficult? What can I change?" And they continue. Same situation, different interpretation, completely different trajectory. This is where your blind spot has the most power, how you explain things to yourself. Your explanations shape your beliefs shape your actions, and your actions shape your life. So if your explanations are flawed, everything built on top of them will be unstable. This is why awareness matters more than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Awareness stays, if you practice it. You don't need to feel inspired every day. You need to see clearly, because clarity reduces resistance. Now let's bring this down to something practical. You don't need to fix everything at once. That's another trap. Instead, choose one pattern, just one, something small but consistent. Maybe it's how you respond to discomfort, or how you talk to yourself after a mistake. For the next few days, observe it. Don't try to change it immediately, just notice it. When it happens, how it feels, what thoughts come with it. Then, introduce a small shift. Not a dramatic change, just a slight adjustment. Pause for a second longer. Choose a slightly different response. That's how real change happens. Not through force, but through awareness followed by small, consistent action. And if this way of thinking resonates with you, if you're someone who wants to understand your mind instead of being controlled by it, then you're in the right place. Consider subscribing, liking, or sharing your thoughts in the comments, not just to support the channel, but to join a group of people choosing awareness over autopilot. Because the truth is, your life doesn't change when you try harder. It changes when you see differently. And once you see clearly, even the smallest step forward becomes intentional. In the end, the biggest prison isn't your circumstances, it's the story you stopped questioning.